So let's jump in. I got a big day here. We got a big day. We got a lot going on. And we have breaking news. Welcome to Over 50, starting over. I'm Barry Edwards.
I'm Merle Garrison.
Hey, why don't you tell us about the breaking news, Merle? Big day.
Well,
we all know what it is right now.
Yeah. So, of course, we know President Trump and his wife have coronavirus, and it is a major story.
It's a major story. I was trying to get what I could on my way to the gym, going through news stations. NPR had a political analyst on that. I had to sit there in the car listening to that for a few minutes to glean some kind of information to share. But it was interesting because he said that, we're just starting the debates and the next one is in just under 2 weeks, and he's quarantined for 2 weeks, of course. Right. And so the talk is, how does this impact the presidency? How does it impact the election? And this guy's like, this is complicated. He says, this is really complicated because so many ballots have already been mailed out. So there's some precedents. I know that you're going to speak more eloquently to this than me, but I'm just sharing some baseline stuff. Mm-hmm. So he said that there's some precedents, but in general, the Republican Party could choose to put Pence in as the electee, even if Trump wins. But if Trump gets very sick at 74 years old, it remains to be seen. We don't know how this is going to go, but I know this. Pelosi and Schumer are loving this. That this is their ace in the hole to get the debates canceled in some way or another. What do you think?
Yeah, so there is precedent here. We have a long history of presidents who have gotten sick while they were in office, whether they got the flu or whether they were deathly ill. They still remained in office. And, here we are in a presidential season. So FDR in his last term was extremely sick. He could only work half a day until noon, and that was it. And he was reelected. So he had some very serious heart situations, and he actually died in office several months after that, but he was reelected. President Woodrow Wilson, during the pandemic of the early 1900s, actually contracted the Spanish flu.
Really?
Yep. And he actually got it twice. So, which is pretty crazy. But and he stayed until the end. And so here's the deal: is that President Trump is a person that is not showing any symptoms right now. He's just tested positive. I think there's a lot to be seen here. I do believe that this could work either way. I have a feeling that, and we're already seeing the evidence of this, that his opponents will overreact to this. I already see Carl Bernstein out there saying that we are now in a national crisis regarding this, and that Nancy Pelosi should get ready to take over the presidency.
Oh my God! What happened to Mike Pence?
And yeah, well, obviously he's going to get coronavirus as well, and he's not going to make it either. So we're in a national crisis. I think this overreaction that we're going to see is going to actually work in Trump's favor. I do believe that. That's my guess, because these are the very same people that have been out there saying that Trump displays no empathy whatsoever and only cares about himself, and that he is an evil, ruthless man. And here they are, pretty much counting him out, and they're throwing dirt on his grave. Exact qualities that they're saying that he is. And I believe that this is going to embolden the base of Trump. I don't believe this is going to cause anybody that says that they're going to vote for Biden to vote for Trump whatsoever. I really believe that pretty much people have already decided who they're going to vote for.
I think so too.
I think what this is going to do, though, is it's going to cause more people to go to the polls than were previously planning to go to the polls. And I think that's a pretty big deal. I think this kind of puts that in the spotlight. Of course, what we're going to hear is that, Trump put the country in jeopardy. We're already seeing that. We're seeing people, his opponents, saying he couldn't even take care of himself. How is he going to take care of the country? It's ruthless what's happening right there. But this ruthlessness is not an American quality. And I think they're making a mistake by saying these kinds of things.
That's interesting that you said that. That's a very positive spin on a very negative situation, that you just really believe that we're more good than that innately as American people.
I think the media would want you to believe that this is the type of society that is winner take all, and that people don't have a heart and they're only out for themselves. That's the message that we've been hearing over and over again. But I really just don't believe that. I don't believe that that's the world that we live in.
But I'll guarantee you that Pelosi and Schumer are wringing their hands, probably popping bottles of champagne right now and giddily laughing with laughter over this news.
Yeah, I don't think those are very nice people whatsoever. I think those are the people that the media is talking about, although they would blame that on somebody else. But I did see one of the first things that I saw. So this morning, as you know, it's early here. So the first thing that I saw this morning was your text saying that Trump had coronavirus. And I was just
Didn't
like, oh my God.
Freak you out? Yes.
I saw last night, the last thing I saw before I went to bed was that his close advisor had tested positive, and that he and his wife were waiting for the test results. So I was hoping that he was going to be okay. And then this morning I saw your text and I thought, geez, all hell's about to break loose here. And, here he's been having these rallies, and Joe Biden and the rest of the Democrats have been trying to say that, look, he's putting the country in danger. And, so they're going to play that card. They're going to play that card. But I think it's going to backfire on them. I really do.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. But what remains to be seen is how sick they really get. I think that's going to be interesting. And Merle, I remember saying to you last podcast at some point, I said, man, 2020, what else could you possibly throw at us?
I think I said, oh my God, don't say that.
Don't say that. Because wait till you see what happens next. And Lord only knows how bad this could get. I don't even want to verbalize how bad it could get.
I personally don't think that Trump is, look, they're asymptomatic right now. They're not showing any symptoms. I think that it's going to be something of a mild situation. I think Melania is in very good shape. She looks like she's in great shape. She doesn't have she's not in the red zone for any of the qualities of the most vulnerable. Now, President Trump is. He's 74 years old, I believe. So that's one. But look, when you take a look at the COVID deaths that are out there, most of them had comorbidities. The average was almost 3 comorbidities, and they perished. President Trump doesn't have any comorbidities. This guy seems to, even though he's not really the picture of health, he is overweight. He is a person that seems to overcome just about anything. So we're going to see what's happening. As far as the debate is concerned, I don't think that this has a bearing on if the debate will continue, because you could still do a Zoom debate. We're doing that kind of stuff all the time.
I'm telling you, mark my words, that Pelosi's going to use this with all her might to try to say that she's trying everything to cancel debates because she knows Biden's going to get himself in trouble. They know that.
You're right. I mean, she was doing that before this happened.
Yeah.
She was saying that because President Trump was so rude and lied so much in the last debate, that this is already one and done, and there's no need for any more debate. So this is just fodder for her.
It is.
Of course she's going to say that kind of thing. But what do we expect from Nancy Pelosi?
I wanted to just say something briefly. Yesterday, I picked up my mail from the rental house where I get the election stuff. All my bills come here. But I was looking for that election ballot thing. What do you call that?
Yeah,
to mail it.
The one they mailed out to you?
Yeah. Well, I got 4. Lisa's got a bunch. Totally confusing. So, here I was able to lay them out on the table and we got to talk about it. So I did get the one official from the absentee ballot application. And this is from official election mail. Who's the dude? The state governor, not the governor, Secretary Frank LaRose, Ohio Secretary of State. Okay, so that's the
Right.
official one. I did fill this out, but I got 3 others from this other outfit called the Voter Participation Center, and they got a official looking logo and everything. But when you go down to the fine print at the bottom, it says this mailing has been paid for by the Voter Participation Center, VPC, is a non-government, non-profit, and non-partisan 501c3 organization. And so I got 3 of these, like the first one and then a follow-up and then last chance or whatever. I can't totally figure out what this is. And I'm sure it's confusing everyone else. And so Lisa and I said, we can keep sending all of these back in. You know what it's doing, though, is creating a lot of confusion and bureaucracy for our government to sift through the final ballots to make sure there's not triplicates out there. It's ridiculous.
I don't, they're trying to lampoon President Trump for bringing this subject up and that he's actually stealing the confidence in the voter system here and damaging our democracy by bringing this up. But the fact of the matter is exactly what you said is the truth, is that this is confusing. The second thing is that, are we going to trust the government to actually be able to accurately sift through all of this stuff when this is a brand new process? I'll tell you a little story. We just have gone through the census, and this time around, and I think this was new, where you could fill out the census online, which I thought was a good idea. Okay, this is a federal government program, and it's important that we do the census. It's in the Constitution and everything. And so I filled it out online for both me and Anne Marie, and felt real good about taking care of it. Well, we've had like 3 people. First off, since then, I've received a ton of stuff in the mail saying, fill out your census. You haven't filled out your census. Fill out your census. I got a receipt that I filled it out. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I had 2 people show up at my door. Yeah. And one of them I actually had to ask to leave. And he says, no, but this is all about how many Congress people we have in California. And I had to tell him, I don't care. I've already filled this out. You guys need to take care of this. So, and I'm wondering, how much of my tax dollars am I paying to have not only all of this collateral sent to me, but also 2 human beings showing up at my door? Besides all that, I mean, the ID that they have, I could have made that on my printer, and they're asking me all about who lives here and, how long. I don't know who these people are. With all the stuff that's going on the street, I don't want to give that kind of information out to a stranger. But if you can't handle the census, how are you going to handle this this disaster? As President Trump says, this is a disaster in the making.
It is. It's our bureaucracy. The government runs so inefficiently. It's so sloppily, so much waste. I don't know what to say about that, but I want to ask you let's talk briefly about the debates. I say briefly because it's kind of old news now. It's been covered for the past 3 days to death. But I certainly, everybody wants to know your take on it, for sure.
Yeah, so I have to say, I think I'm along with everybody else. I think I was extremely disappointed with what I saw. I obviously I'm a conservative, so I wanted Trump to do much better than he did. I thought it was a big mistake for him to be interrupting and really battling with Chris Wallace the entire time and interrupting everything that Joe Biden said. I think it was a bad strategy for him to interrupt Biden, just because from what we've seen, Biden can take care of destroying himself with his own rhetoric. So why not let him speak and let him bury himself?
Yeah. I think that he goes in with a strategy. It's kind of like what he does in foreign policy with Kim Jong-un and people like that, if I said his name right.
You're pretty close.
What he will do is beat the hell out of them in the beginning, just badger them, insult them, and internationally. And which softens them up a little bit. And then when he gets some cooperation, he then butters them up and becomes their buddy. And it works. He's a great deal maker. I don't know how this applies to his strategy with the debates. I don't believe that he listens to his strategists if he even talks to them. I think he just knows in his head what his plan is, and he moves forward with it. So I don't know. My guess would be is that he would continue to take the strong offensive route like this.
Yeah, from what I heard, that it indeed was his strategy going in to not let Joe Biden have any kind of leg up on him. And if he were to insult Trump, that Trump was going to go ahead and interrupt him. So that was a strategy going in. I think it was a terrible strategy.
I do too.
And it made him come off as the exact kind of guy that the media has been labeling him this whole time. And I'd also say this, I studied rhetoric and communication in college. And so that means I studied all of these different debates and State of the Unions. I mean, we dissected those things ad nauseum, but one of the big debates that we studied was the one between Kennedy and Nixon. And this was the first televised debate. And Kennedy won the debate, but it was because it was on TV. If you would listen to the debate regarding the substance, Nixon actually would have won the debate. So if this had been on the radio like all the other ones had been, Nixon would have won that. And of course, Kennedy goes on to win the election. But here's Nixon looking like he's unshaven and he's sweating. And here's Kennedy looking very composed and very bright on the television, and that matters apparently.
Yeah, it does.
Well, when you saw the difference between Trump and Joe Biden, Trump looked bloated, sweaty, and mean, and Joe Biden didn't. And so I kind of feel like that made a difference. Now, here's Trump. He's been doing these rallies, and the man had just done one, I think, the night before. He was also looking really red. He's done all these rallies outside, so he looked sun-beaten, maybe even dehydrated. He's and maybe this had something to do with him coming down with coronavirus as well. Maybe his immune system was weakened by this whole thing, but it's an interesting time. We're going to see what happens. I mean, we've got a lot of things that are going on already with this coronavirus thing that's happened. They're talking about postponing the hearings for Amy Coney Barrett, and they're saying it's because she was in very close proximity with Donald Trump just 6 days ago. So this is having all kinds of ramifications here. It's going to be really interesting how this all plays out.
Yeah, really is. Where do you want to go from here? I didn't have much of career stuff that I wanted to talk about, simply because I have these ongoing projects that I've talked a lot about that are still going on. I know that I wanted to take more time to find some more inspirational stuff that I like to take in. I got a couple good stories that I may take to the end. Oh, I know what I want to say.
Let's go there. I have something I wanted to bring up. I was watching The Five yesterday, and I rarely watch that show, though I do like the show. But they were talking about how sending angry emails causes stress in a working environment. And
sure it does.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, do you ever like, oh, you know what? I'm going to send an email about that. Have you ever done that before?
I'm not exactly sure of your context, but here is what I will say to that is, and I mentioned before, I think all tone gets lost in email, which is why I've loved the fact that people have gotten used to Zoom. to communicate. So my relationships with my clients have been so much more productive and friendly. However, I had or have, I'm not sure, a client that I've been trying to build a very professional online presence for them. I went in, I proposed everything. They're way in the past. They have a website that looks like it was done in 1995, and the president doesn't believe in that stuff. Very blue collar company that would, if they listened to me, they would reap many benefits. They would, the return on investment for them would be great, but they can't see that. So anyways, in the meantime, this was 2 years ago, I started talking with them. Then they pawned their website on this archaic website that I don't even have the tools to work on anymore. They pawned that on me saying, well, if you could just maintain this for us, we're going to keep talking about redoing it the way that you're proposing because we believe in you. It's just we can't get the president on board yet. So during this time, I have to sub out the website corrections and changes to a guy in the Philippines that actually has the tools to do this. Some things get lost in translation. I know it's all a waste of money. And it's just my relationship had deteriorated over time with them, me having to deal with this really bad, inferior website via email, because that's how they like to communicate. So everything about this company is very archaic. And so my relationship with them really got south because of the snippy emails I would get from them. And then they start blaming me for this website, forgetting that I didn't create it. I'm the one that's trying to get you out of this nightmare. And so I think my relationship has completely deteriorated with them because of email.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, if we would talk via Zoom, I'd be able to explain all this but the snippy emails I would get from them. It's like, come on, man, that's a little 2010 for me.
I think that that's an important point that you're making, is that really, even if you were to pick up the telephone and have a telephone conversation without Zoom, would be so much better than having these types of back and forths over email. And I think that's a point, that when that happens coming towards you, it's probably a good idea to confront this head on and have a direct dialogue rather than on the phone. And I also believe this, that if you are in that situation, it's probably a good idea for you to not make the phone call immediately if you're feeling emotional.
That's a good point.
And take maybe a breath and realize that maybe these people are just having a bad day. It's nothing personal before you make that phone call. And maybe even, I remember some sales training that I had where they said, put a mirror in front of you so you can see your face, even if you're on the telephone, and make sure you're positive. Maybe put a smile on your face before you make that phone call, because, your voice can project that smile.
It does.
And it can be very disarming.
Yeah, it truly does.
I also believe, Lincoln is one of my heroes as a president. And it's interesting because he's a guy that wrote a lot of letters. And really back then, that's how you communicated, was purely by letters, or you got in front of people. And he wrote a lot of letters that have been preserved. And the thing about Lincoln is that he wrote a lot of letters that he never sent. And even more interesting is that you can see letters that he sent and letters that he held back and wrote another letter instead that he sent. And so during the Civil War, he would write letters to his generals. And if you know the history, his generals for the first several years were really screwing up the war. I mean, they were doing all the things they weren't supposed to do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Lincoln would write this letter and it would just be seething with anger. And why would you do that? But then he would put the letter in his desk, and apparently he would wait some time, and then another letter would be captured by history for all time, the actual letter that he sent to the general. And there was always criticism, but it was in the form of this. It was a guy I used to work for used to call it the hamburger, is, you've got two buns and then you have meat in the middle. Well, you use the hamburger approach. You give them a compliment. This is what I like, but here's some things that I want you to work on. And then you finish with the bottom of the bun, which is, I believe in you. I know that you can do this. We're all counting on you. And those were the kind of letters that he would send. And these were very encouraging. Some of them would make you want to move mountains yourself. But then when you saw the letter that he wrote in the beginning, it was just an assassination. And he never sent those letters. And I find in business that we should be taking the same approach. If we're trying to correct a situation, if we're trying to work with a teammate or a client, this is an approach that actually keeps the door open, keeps the relationship very fresh, and you really sustain a lasting partnership by doing it this way. One of the things that I have recommended to people with email, because we live in an email-centric type of a society, is that if you're angry, go ahead and write it down, but maybe wait 24 hours before you send that response, and then reread it and see if that's really what you want to send. Because just like Abraham Lincoln, whatever you write down is always going to be there for the future. You can't unsay what you write down.
Yeah, I think that we've come a long ways recently in realizing that writing stuff like social media, typing out social media posts, email is the same way. It's the lowest form of communication. Picking up a phone, as you said, is probably the next best thing. But Zoom is literally almost as good as face-to-face.
Almost. Yeah.
Almost. Yeah. I mean, it's real close. I really like what Zoom has done for our business relationships.
I think you bring up another good point too, Barry, and that is that we have to protect our online image and what we're posting online, especially in this age of extreme protesting. We've really got to be careful with what we put out there, because it's not going to ever go away. I think as we're in this election time, a lot of videos and things like that probably these people that are running for office would rather are not out there are surfacing. So we've really got to be careful with even what we put on Facebook. Things pictures that we take with our family.
What we put on Facebook, especially.
As a person that would go and hire people as a hiring manager, hey, if you put it out there online, I'm going to find it.
Yep.
I'm going to Google your name and see what comes up. And, you've got to be careful. If there's something politically that you believe, well, then you might want to consider it. And I personally have had to consider my own beliefs because I'm doing this show. But these are things that, hey, if somebody doesn't want to hire me because of how I present myself in this manner, not that I don't want to be hired, but hey, I've got to make that choice. And maybe I don't want to work with people that can't have a civilized conversation. And even though we might have differences of belief, and certainly we hold that standard on this show.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's a tough world these days, because social media like Facebook, studies show that the more people post, well, it coincides with their degree of mental unhealth, like depression. So people that are heavily depressed are posting the most. And I've seen this personally as well. And, oh, geez, the people that are out there just sharing hate, they're usually single, like lifelong single guys for the most part. I can think of a girl or two, but their posts are just so emotion filled, and that is their release. And I don't know, Merle, I think it'd be really difficult to sustain a healthy career if you're putting that kind of stuff online. A lot of people don't even realize that. In 2020, a lot of people don't realize that. One thing I've even realized, I go on a lot of sites and I post comments. You know how much I love comments reading, because I get a beat on what people are really thinking. And for the most part in these kind of comments, you have anonymity.
Right.
So you create an identity. But I still think that we will evolve enough. I know I realize, even if I'm anonymous, I will never be the troll anymore. I could say in the early days, I used to get fired up in there too, but not anymore. It still comes right back at you. It comes right back into your psyche. What kind of person are you? And what kind of negativity are you creating for yourself and for your day every day? So like these people that I hear about on Twitter, that are on Twitter intermittently throughout the entire day fighting with people, I think that they are just destroying their lives, their psyche.
I agree. It's such a great point that you're making, is that, even if you're anonymous and you put out that type of anger, that just ricochets back at you and destroys you. Boy, it reminds me of a funny story. I remember a good friend of mine when we were teenagers. He got this moped from Rick Case. Remember, anything you got from Rick Case was a piece of junk. And this guy's bike was horrible, and it broke down on the side of the road. And this guy was one of those guys where he would just have a temper tantrum, and he took a rock and he threw it at the moped, and it hit his tire, ricocheted back and hit him in the eye, and he got a black eye.
Oh, ouch.
This is exactly the same kind of thing that happens when people write this kind of thing. It comes back on them whether they realize it or not. They get a black eye from this kind of stuff, and they go around and they're miserable because of it. And you're seeing it out there so much. Gosh, just the other day, my car broke down, and it broke down right in the middle of the road in my I live in a townhouse, so it was in the parking lot. There was enough room for this woman to get past my car, so I waved her past. But boy, did she ever give me the stink eye. And then she yelled out, "You just think you can park anywhere." And this is, I told her, "Well, my car broke down." She goes, "Well, I'm sorry you couldn't push it out of the way." And I had some pretty choice words I wanted to say, but what I said was, "I'm sorry you're having such a bad day. I think my day is a little worse, but I hope yours gets better."
That was perfect. That was perfect.
You know what? One of my neighbors actually heard what was going on, and he came out and helped me push my car back into the parking space.
Yeah.
And I saw him the next day, and he says, "You know what? I heard that." Because I was thanking him, and he said, "Well, what are neighbors for?" He goes, "I heard what was going on, and I heard your response, and I thought, what composure this guy has. I got to go out there and help him."
Oh, that, you know what? You just illustrated the point of, we were talking about anonymous post. Even though it's anonymous, you're still creating an energy for you that you have to live with.
Yeah.
And you just carried that into the real world and illustrated that point right there. That's a great story.
Boy, and the thing is, I didn't know he was listening to me. I didn't know anybody. I thought I would be anonymous out there, but I wasn't. And and that guy's never going to forget that. I got to say, even after that, the woman ducked behind this thing so we couldn't talk anymore. She hid from me.
Yeah.
But before that guy came out, I was thinking, "Ooh, I wanted to follow her over there." And another thing,
of course, you wanted to do that. It's instinct, but you're more evolved than that.
I would like to think.
Hey, did you know the Browns are 2-1 right now?
Get out of here!
They're 2-1. They just beat Haskins' Washington football team.
Washington football team.
And I was thinking, if they change things up just a little bit, maybe call it Washington Troubled Football Team, they could be the WTF team, which would pretty much explain it all. But
that's
Haskins,
hilarious.
former OSU quarterback, he took over I think he's in his second year. Supposed to have high expectations. I think he looks terrible. I don't think he looks like an NFL quarterback.
Wow.
Yeah, but the Browns are 2-1, and considering who they've beaten, I think they are still unproven. So Dallas is this weekend. Dallas has a new head coach, Cowboys, and so are really largely in the same boat as Cleveland, having all new systems come in, new coaches come in, no preseason games, and Dallas is really struggling. I think they're 1-2. And
I love that.
Well, so we're still trying to get a beat on who the Browns are right now. They have improved with each game, but these last two teams were not very good. And I would say Dallas is probably average, right there in the middle. So if they win against Dallas, then we could start saying this team is heading in the right direction. Because I will say, too, about this last game with Washington, the ball, for the first time in 25 years, the ball bounced in the Browns' direction. I mean,
in 25 years.
Not kidding. Like, there was an interception for this really long run back. You know what it's like when one of these defenders gets a pick and then they start running back and they look like they've never ran with a football before,
right, exactly.
but they're really excited about it. And this guy's darting. He came back like 55 yards, trying to get to the end zone so bad that he, of course, fumbled the football.
Oh, my gosh.
But the Browns recovered it. Okay. This is my point. That's not happened in 25 years.
You're right. Exactly.
All kinds of things like that. So,
wow. Well,
is the curse lifting after all this time? Remains to be seen.
How about the fact that it's happening during this time in particular? That's odd. Is this an end of the world prophecy here?
Because the Steelers and Titans game has been postponed. The Titans, they came down with
COVID.
A whole bunch of COVID. I had written down somewhere, but like about 4 players and 5 personnel, including a coach. So that game is going to be pushed towards later in the season. But here it is: 5 players and 6 personnel tested positive. Will this be the actual beginning of the end of the NFL season? That's my question. And you made an excellent point. That would be the perfect capper on this season if the Browns win like the next 3 in a row. And, fever is at its all-time, and I mean Browns fever, is at its all-time peak. And then, we'll never finish out the season.
Yeah, that'd be exactly what would happen. It's like it'll be the day before the Super Bowl. Sorry. You got to cancel. Sorry.
You're right. Yeah. Oh, boy.
It kind of reminds me of the first time the Indians made it to all the way that they were going to go into the playoffs. They had the best record in the major league. Oh, they really were. And then they canceled the season because of the strike.
Oh, the strike, correct. Do you remember
that?
The NFL strike season when we were in college?
Yes, I do.
I thought that was fun, watching all of
you had the scabs.
Yeah, they just got slapped together. I thought that was so fun to watch.
Remember some of those plays? It was like it was like watching Pee Wee football. They were doing like the wing formation.
Yeah,
and it was like watching
double reverses and stuff.
Yeah, it was like watching football from like the 1920s or something.
Just need a little bit of that Keystone Cops music going on in the background.
A couple of those guys made it into the pros from there too.
Hey, did you hear that? You know how Joe Rogan got that like $300 million deal with Spotify to be exclusive with them? All right. I have heard this a couple times now, but I can't find it on a major publication. But Sportskita.com posted an article about how the employees of Spotify are trying to censor Rogan now. They are threatening to go on strike. They for sure. They talked about this. They lost a whole bunch of archives of past interviews with the likes of Milo Yiannopoulos, Gavin McInnes, and Alex Jones. Just all happen to be very conservative.
Yeah, they lost them, huh?
Yes.
That's a shame.
So I don't know. I swear they just the far left, I should say, cannot get over the whole trying to censor everybody thing and cancel people. It's funny, Spotify goes and buys out Rogan's podcast, and now they're going to probably cancel him, which I don't think they ever expected to happen.
That is really something. Well, just this is par for the course, isn't it? The cancel society that we live in right now, it just doesn't matter if the powers that be don't like the conservative message, they're going to flush it down the toilet. And we're seeing this left and right. This is to me, this is the major attack on our society. The whole premise of free speech is under attack, and it's the First Amendment for a reason. We found out this week that several of Trump's ads, campaign ads, have been removed from Facebook. And how can they just go ahead and just remove ads from Facebook? These are campaign ads. That doesn't make any sense. And it goes along with the debate. After the debate was over, as much as we hated what happened, it is still free speech. And they were planning on, there's been a lot of talk that the commissioners of the debate were going to implement a mute button that the moderators could use. And really, I think that would be atrocious, because this is right up there with, hey, if you don't like what's being said, you just hit the mute button. And that's just not really how things are supposed to roll here in our country.
I know, Merle. I think that's a really important point. But when I was watching, I told you I couldn't stomach watching the debate. Bet you I watched 75% of it, though.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did. And the whole time I was thinking, next time around, they're going to put these two clowns in two glass boxes with a mute button, with microphones with a mute button. And because of Trump, it's unavoidable. I was so dismayed with his performance with that, because you like to talk about the integrity of the Constitution and our more American ideals and that kind of thing. And I know that you agree with me, so don't take this the wrong way, but if the situation were reversed and Biden behaved that way, that's what you would say is he's taking down our American ideals, our way of doing things. And I really felt like that about Trump, that he ruined our tradition of fair debate.
Yeah, I really, personally, I hated it. I thought it was terrible. And and if it had been the other way around, I may have been even madder about it. But I just thought he did himself a terrible disservice by doing that. And the other thing that I believe too is that I talk about this a lot, is that when you know the truth, there's no reason to get all worked up about it. You don't have to become emotional. The truth has its own way of defending itself. The truth has a ring to it. And so if somebody is saying something that's not true, rather than interrupt them and get all emotional, wait till they're done. Let them make their point, and then calmly make your points and let them get emotional. And from an outsider point of view, if you're trying to decide who you're going to vote for or who you're going to believe, it's way easier to believe the guy that's very calm and matter of fact, sticks to the facts, does not get emotional, than the guy that's just flying off the handle, yelling insults. And speaking of insults, I thought it was really low class of Joe Biden to be calling the president the names that he was calling him during the debate. I understand that the president was not acting the way that he should have been acting, but the fact is that he's still the president, and to call him a clown, I think, is not a good move. I think showing respect, even though you're in a debate, and a dirty debate at that, but calling somebody names, calling them a racist, there's no grounds to be calling people names like that. I don't know. What did you think about that?
Just to back up about 1 minute ago with what you were talking about Trump's unruly behavior. You would say, keep your calm. Let the one that's getting all emotional, yelling and screaming, disprove themselves. The truth will always shine through. Boy, did I always believe that too. And on an interpersonal level, I still believe that. But on the more macro scale, right now, we are in such a polarized society where the media is pumping out lie after lie and trying to divide us, trying to incite violence. Look at Trump's performance was almost parallel to I see parallels to the anarchy riots that are going on. This is the time that we're living in right now, where it seems like everybody just feels that they got to scream louder than the next person to get heard. I don't know. It's like we're in this very immature time. The media has the philosophy, there's a marketing philosophy about if you say something 7 times, people will finally accept it as truth. And they are doing that all day, every day. They pick a point, and that's what you see them do. And there's enough, at least they believe there's enough of a gullible and naive American public that strategy can work. And then we see these riots of kids that don't have jobs out there rioting in the streets. Then you see Trump out there on the debate stand yelling over Biden like an immature kid. So when you just tell us the same thing, I believe that if you keep your cool and you speak the truth, it's going to triumph over this other immaturity. Not so sure if that's true right now. You know?
I don't know. I hear what you're saying. I think it's a good comparison because, gosh, you know, I was watching these Black Lives Matter people. They surrounded a guy and they were trying to get him to say Black Lives Matter.
Oh.
And he was saying, you know, all lives matter. I don't look at people as far as color. I look at you as a human being. But as he was trying to say that to this woman, and she would not be quiet. She just, you know, she wasn't listening. She was talking over him and just yelling at him and saying these things. And I thought, you know, how are we ever, as a society, how are we ever going to move forward if we just won't listen to each other?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of believe this, that didn't mean that this woman triumphed over that guy. I see it just the opposite. I think that if anybody was watching that, and several people were because it went viral, I think that people are going to see what that guy said, because you could still hear what he was saying, even though she was yelling over him. And he was remaining calm the whole time. Clearly, that guy won the day there, because that video would not have gone viral had he not. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm going to say that I still believe that even in this day, having a calm answer with the facts, it's not going to win everybody over. Mm-hmm. But like I said in the beginning, I really believe that there's more good people in this country than there are these vicious people that don't have a heart out there. And maybe that's the silent majority that you and I have talked about before. I believe those are the people that are affected by that type of a strategy. And I still believe that it works.
What's interesting, you brought up Black Lives Matter again, and during the debate, there's the whole Antifa, you know, the left has their incredible spoiled brats called Antifa that are so violent, and they don't want to talk about them, but they sure like them out there causing a disruption.
Absolutely.
And so then to try to equal things out, Biden brings up the whole, well, can you denounce white supremacy, which was like the dumbest thing ever. I mean, Trump has denounced white supremacy a lot of times, but there's something about him he doesn't want to pick out individuals or something, whatever, but he's denounced it many times. This leads me to, I had never heard of this organization called the Proud Boys before until like 2-3 days ago. Have you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I have not. So all of a sudden they're being brought out of the woodwork. And Trump also said, I don't really know much about them, but anyways, they're trying to be painted as a white supremacy movement to counteract the whole Antifa and Black Lives Matter thing. Dude, I looked them up. The chairman, the international chairman is Enrique Tarrio. And he is.
Did you say Enrique?
Yes. That is, as one of the comments said, it was so funny. This is the furthest thing from a white. Somebody in the comments said, like one of the top ones, worst white supremacy outfit ever. They got all kinds of interracial marriage is in the membership. And Enrique Tarrio, he's as Latino as you've ever seen.
That's great. Well, the first time I heard of them had to deal with Portland, and they had come in after 75 days of violence in the city of Portland. These guys had enough, and they came in for a counter protest, and it turned into a big clash between the so-called Proud Boys and Black Lives Matter / Antifa. And they had their bottles and they're throwing them at each other. And some people were getting into tussles, and they had the umbrellas. And the Proud Boys, they brought bear spray. That's now a common thing out there. So
bear spray?
Bear spray.
Is that like pepper spray, but stronger for bears?
It's for bears, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And you see it because there's a big fog that comes out of it. And yeah, it's basically pepper spray.
Okay.
And remember the guy that from Black Lives Matter / Antifa, he was white and he shot and killed somebody.
Yeah, the 17-year-old?
Yeah. I don't know that he was a 17-year-old, but this happened just recently, and he shot the guy. The guy that he shot was from the Proud Boys.
Oh,
and apparently a pretty good guy. He was out there with his friend, and they were alone. And they said they got this all on tape. There's two of them right there. Go ahead, get them. And he ends up shooting the guy. And then they chased that guy down. The federal marshals ended up gunning him down when he pulled a gun on the federal marshals. So that's the first time I heard of the Proud Boys. Now the interesting thing is that in the debate, you would have thought that the Proud Boys were the guys that were going around causing all of these riots and burning down our cities, when these guys were really reacting to the fact that their city was being burnt down. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was unfair that Trump was on the spot where he had to denounce white supremacy and the Proud Boys, when they didn't make Joe Biden denounce Antifa or what Black Lives Matter has done all over this country. Mm-hmm. It seemed very one-sided to me.
I agree. And I want to just say for the record that Enrique denounces white supremacy and all forms of racism.
You know, what's interesting is that there is a guy out there that, and I'll get his name in a second, that is a known white supremacist who they tried to associate with Donald Trump. And he is actually, let's see if I can find the guy's name. Yeah, Richard Spencer. He's a neo-Nazi. He was there at Charlottesville when they were trying to tear down that statue of General Lee back at the beginning of President Trump's presidency. And he had made it known that he voted for Trump. And this is where there were good people on both sides, which we all know that right after that, Donald Trump condemned white supremacy and these neo-Nazi groups. Well, Richard Spencer is in charge of that neo-Nazi group that was down there. And he is out there now saying that he's going to be voting for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. And I just think it's interesting how Richard Spencer was a big deal in the news when Donald Trump was running for president and even afterwards. But when he switches his vote over to Biden, crickets, we don't hear anything about it.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't know if you have much more in the current event stuff. I just have some lighter stuff, and but I want to make sure that you talk about everything you want.
I think it's interesting. I talk a lot about Black Lives Matter, and I'm obviously not a fan, but I thought it was interesting this week that some information came out. I actually saw this video of Patrice Cullors and also let's see, her name is Melinda Abdullah, professor of African Studies at California State University, Los Angeles, who founded the group's LA chapter. And they were talking about this whole, you see when Black Lives Matter surrounds someone and they want them to say her name, like Breonna Taylor. Which is interesting how they are always doing that. They're wanting people to say the name of somebody that's been murdered, which is it's terrible that these people get murdered, but why are they wanting people to say their name? Well, in this tape, it's a Zoom meeting, actually. You can find it online. These two are talking to each other about this. And I just wanted to read a little bit here. It says, and this is Abdullah. She's saying, And it took almost a year for me to realize that this movement is much more than a racial or social justice movement. At its core, it's a spiritual movement because we're literally standing on spilled blood. The women proceeded to discuss the meaning behind one of the most common chants associated with Black Lives Matter, "Say her name." And this is a quote: "When we say the names, right? So we speak their names. We say her name, say their names. We do that all the time. That you kind of invoke that spirit. And then those spirits actually become present with you," Abdullah added. Colors said that, Colors is the founder, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter. She said, "Spirituality is at the center of Black Lives Matter, at the center." She says, "I think that that's not just for us. I feel like so many leaders and so many organizations are deeply engaged in a pretty important spiritual practice." She said, "I don't think I could do this work without that. I don't think I could do it as long as I've done it and as consistently. I feel like if I didn't do that, it would be antithetical to this work." She actually goes on to talk about how when they say the name of the person, they actually start to get to know that spirit. And even though they didn't know them bodily, now they're in constant communication with these spirits. This is what they're talking about. And they're talking about it being a spiritual based movement, sort of like a religion. And so now we've seen this movement that seems to be a social justice movement, but then we find out that Patrisse Cullors is actually a trained Marxist, and then we start to find out that she herself is calling it a religious movement. And I just think it's pretty interesting. I hope people have their eyes open wide to what's actually going on here, because it's kind of scary to think that they're perpetrating a religious sort of cult-like organization on the general public and making it look like this is all about civil rights.
Very interesting. It does bring me back to, I forgot about a link that I had, because you bring it back to the Black Lives Matter movement again. I found, and it's actually over a month old, but a black guy with 4 boys that wrote an open letter to LeBron James, and it made the circuit. I'd like to read it to you. It's not that long, but it's, "Dear LeBron James." And, oh, by the way, you know how vocal he's been about.
Oh, yeah. He's saying we're all, as black people, being hunted every time we leave the house.
Yeah, I just want to make that clear. He's done the movement, a lot of bad, I would say. "Dear LeBron James, you don't speak for me and my boys. I'm a father of 4 brown boys. It is my responsibility as a father to protect and serve them. There is no need for police in my home because as the father, I'm the authority in my home. Police are needed where fathers and law and order are absent. When there is no father to protect and serve children, police have to move into that community to protect and serve." I think that's a very powerful statement right there.
Absolutely.
"Where there is no father or authority in the home or neighborhood, young men rebel." God, this is so poignant right now.
No kidding.
This is why police are having a hard time gaining compliance with fatherless boys on the side of the road. They refuse to sit down, be quiet, and comply. Why? Because the police are the first men to tell them no and assert their authority. These boys have spent years under no one's authority, and that's the main problem. So please don't speak for me and my boys. Me and my boys are not terrified of the police because we respect the police and accept their authority. That's because they first had to respect me as their father and accept my authority. Actually, one of them wants to be a police officer. We are terrified of the black men that kill each other in the black neighborhoods every day. We are afraid of the black men that threaten us and call us coons and Uncle Toms for desiring, probably just got censored on YouTube right there, for desiring to live a peaceful and successful life. We are aware of the fact that 93% of all black homicides are by black men. This is from the Justice Bureau of Statistics.
Absolutely.
If you really want to help fatherless boys like yourself, stop using fear tactics and guilt trips. Help promote legislation like, in quotes, equal shared parenting. That helps divorced dads and single dads have more time with their children without paying more child support. Help get legislation passed to make child support more fair and equal. Fund programs like hashtag good guys, hashtag good girls that help young black youth save sex until marriage, respect police, develop work ethic, and accomplish their goals. And he has a link there. Stop blaming the police and help build better fathers. Stop saying police need more training and train more dads and young black boys on the rule of law and police protocols. Almost done. Remember, there are millions of black and brown boys out there that are not being killed by police. They are alive and doing well. How? We obey the law. Comply with police, and if police do something wrong or unethical, they live to fight in the court and not on the side of the road. Signed, right. Patrick D. Hampton.
That is outstanding.
I'll leave the link in the show notes.
I love that. And what the black community needs, and we can see it very clearly, is not an organization like Black Lives Matter that is a pseudo religion that is calling for the elimination of the DEA, the Border Patrol, ICE, or general law enforcement whatsoever. In other words, pandemonium. I don't understand how that's going to help the black community. We see that they're tearing it down. What they need is strong leadership from dads.
There you go.
That's exactly what they need. And when you start looking at the statistics of single parent households in the black community, I mean, the mother is raising the child. The statistics speak for themselves. And if there are good fathers in the house that are well grounded, they won't need to have. You won't see any of this stuff that's happening out there. And why aren't more people talking about this? And one last thing I'll say is, just like you've said, and I've agreed that, you know, Obama, when he became the president, rather than saying to the world, look, racism is marginalized. I'm a black man and I'm the president of the strongest country in the world. Let's link arms together because we are now a colorblind society. Rather than saying that, he threw gasoline on racism. Mm-hmm. And here's LeBron James, one of the richest men in the world, saying that he's hunted every time he goes out the door. Are you kidding me? And isn't it interesting that LeBron James grew up in a fatherless household himself?
He's a hero. He should be such a huge success story if he didn't throw that victimhood out there, because he obviously followed a different path. And I said before, I admire the fact that he has every excuse in the world to be a troubled young man. And but you never see his name, you know, in the newspaper for the wrong things as far as breaking the law and doing other dumb things like that. I think he's a miracle in that way. If only he were a little more Michael Jordan-like and just be a better example. I think he's naive. That's what it is. I think he's so a good man. He's just naive.
He seems like it, but I got to say, going back to that time about a year ago where he was talking about that coach from one of the coaches from the NBA who was supporting Hong Kong and their ability to protest. Yeah. And he came out and said, you don't know your history and you're ignorant. It made me very suspicious of what his motivation was for saying that, because clearly what's happening in Hong Kong is terribly wrong. And we know that Nike is a huge backer of the NBA. In fact, Nike pretty much owns the NBA, and they are getting billions and billions of dollars out of China. I don't know. It makes me suspicious of where this guy is really coming from. I like he's a great basketball player, and I like that he's been able to come from the inner city and make himself a very prosperous man. But I think going back to the naive or the ignorance that you talked about, I think he's being played.
Oh, I completely agree. I completely agree. Hey, on
Let's
another
go to
letter.
the lighter side.
Yeah. I wanted to say this is really funny. I heard about it on the news and I had to see it for myself. Geraldo Rivera lives about a mile and a half down the road from us, he and his wife. And there is a whole story about the political signs in their lawn. And I have a link to this story that I'll put in the show notes. It's very funny because there's a Biden Harris sign there. And if you know Geraldo, you know he's really middle of the road, more libertarian than anything else.
Right.
He'll give it to everybody with equal enthusiasm. He handmade a sign that is right next to the Biden Harris sign. It says wife only in an arrow. And it's husband is undecided, leaning towards Trump, but I may vote for Kanye. And then he has a caricature of himself with that big mustache and everything. It's hysterical. So I had to ride my bike down there and take a look at it for myself. It's there.
He lives in Cleveland.
Shaker Heights, yeah.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah. When he guest spots on the 5 a lot, he always shouts out Ohio and Cleveland and Shaker Heights and stuff. Yeah. He loves it here.
You know, you posted a link to a dog rescue that I watched last night right before bed, and I was all crying. That was the sweetest story.
It's on our Facebook page. I posted it yesterday to our Facebook page. I am a sucker for the dog rescue videos. I
like them too.
And by the way, I just read an article yesterday that those kind of stories, the nice animal videos and stuff, lower your blood pressure. They're really good for your health.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. They did a study
on it.
What a
sweet little dog that turned out to be.
That's the thing. He was so little, and God only knows how long he was on his own.
He was skin and bones.
He was skin and bones, and they had a hard time trying to gently get him to capture him, so to speak, because he was so little, so defensive. I don't know. Anyways, but to get to the end of it in those sweet pictures at the end. He is in his forever home with those dogs that look kind of just like him, like he fit in there so well.
I thought, boy, because both of us we're dogless right now, and I would like to have another dog. And I thought, oh, that's the kind of dog I would like. But then I pictured myself walking this 1 pound dog down the road. Like, boy, if I'm one wrong step, and that dog would be in heaven.
Very true. Very true. I think we should sign off at this point, but I want to say go to over50startingover.com and sign up for our email list. You'll get everything dropped right to you, including links to things like this dog video I'm telling you about. You can also catch it on Facebook, and you can like us there. You can like us there straight from our homepage. You got any party words for us, buddy?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think we should send our good wishes and thoughts to the President of the United States. Whether you love him, whether you hate him, he's still the president of the country, and we should send our thoughts and prayers up. By the way, I saw one of the first things I saw this morning was Joe Biden and his wife sending positive thoughts to the president and hoping for a speedy recovery, and I thought that was pretty classy.
I do as well. All right, everybody. Yeah, let's share our thoughts and prayers with each other and smile at people when you're out there. Make the world a better place. If you can't do that, at least take the scowl off your face. All right. Love you, brother. Talk to you next week. Too.